How's everyone today? Pretty good? Good. I see you have the dates up there for revised dates, I could say. Perhaps they already told you, but I decided to go back to Pennsylvania, Bingzhou, for Christmas. It's been a while. Yeah. To be honest, I don't like cold weather, so I would rather go back in the summertime. But it's been it's been almost a year and a half, 18 months since I've been back, so I feel like I should go back and see my family there. So anyhow, I'm going back on 19号, on the 19th, and I'll be there until the 5th of January, so about 2.5 weeks. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure if I'll get a white Christmas this year, but we'll see. You know what a white Christmas is, right? When it's snowing, yeah. Many people, when they hear the name Bingzhou, for some reason, they think there's lots of snow. But actually, Huiding, I've been there many times in the Christmas, and it's not snowing. There's nothing. So I mean, it does snow there, of course. Sometimes they get a lot of snow, but it's not like some parts of America where they always get a lot of snow every winter. Pennsylvania is kind of so-so. Sometimes there's some, sometimes there's a little bit, sometimes there's a lot. So anyhow, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully it'll go well. But yeah, we'll see. Okay, so I thought we would start with this article. It's a front page article, and I read this yesterday actually too, and I thought it was quite a good positive news for Taiwan. And you know, Taiwan and all countries, there's many different rankings for different things. You know, whenever we talk about a ranking, is it okay if I change this? Okay, good. So if we say a ranking, right? What does that mean? If you talk about the ranking of your country, what does that mean? Yeah, it means where are you? What place are you? So if you have a 比赛, for example, let's say we have a race at the Taichung Stadium, and people are running, and we say, well, what ranking did he get? Or sometimes we can say what place, what position. I guess you can say that too. So what ranking, what place, what position? Usually, so you know, we can say, well, his ranking, he has a number one ranking. He is ranked. You can also say he is ranked. Okay, they are ranked number one, or he is ranked number 3. Means what is his position? What is they placed? So this can also be a bonus. You can say he placed 3rd in the race. It means he finished. Of course, we could say he finished 3rd in the race. Okay. So these words are all kind of related together. Each other. It talks about your position in a competition, or some sort of survey, or some sort of when you get a score on something. You can even use this as a test. You know, you can say he is ranked 1st in his class. You know, for something. Okay. So these words are all very good to know. Why don't we say together ranking? Ranking. Is ranked. Is ranked. Place. Placed. Finished. Right. Now, rank is also, if you're in the military, you know, if you're a junren, your rank is what position are you? He's a lieutenant, or he's a general, or it just means what level, what's your title, kind of. Okay, so this is it's a good title. So anyhow, here we're talking about Taiwan's rankings in the world for what they call open countries, and we'll look at the article and see what that means, because obviously you can't just say a country is open. You have to say, well, what is that? How do we decide if a country is open or not? So here the headline says, Taiwan remains Asia's only open country, report says. Okay, good news. Although open civic spaces are shrinking in Asia-Pacific countries and territories, Taiwan's openness is a positive sign, an expert said. Okay, so civic spaces, and we'll talk about this too, because this is kind of a hard word to describe. When I say civic space, I often think of a space, you know, like an area. But I think if we look at this article, it probably means something slightly different. But what does civic mean? Anyone know what's... Yeah, for people. How do we say it in Chinese? Does it mean? Suming. Well, suming is for city government. But civic is just for any society, basically. So basically, space for people. Civic. If we talk about civic responsibility, it means you're responsible to your society, you know. For example, if you act in a way that helps society, or you do something that is useful for everyone, we say you are fulfilling or you are performing your civic responsibility or your civic duty. Okay, what you should do to help everybody in society, you know, like even cleaning the street or making sure that you obey the traffic rules. All those things are part of your civic responsibility. We always go to, like you said, Shuming, right? We have Taichung Shuming Guangchang, right? Where we had our COMPASS festival. That's called Taichung Civic Square. Okay. Now, of course, civic Shuming could mean city resident. I guess you could say that. But civic is a very broad word. Okay, it doesn't just mean city. Okay, so we'll find out. What does shrinking mean? Of course, we've talked about this. Get smaller, right? If you wash clothing in hot water, sometimes it will shrink. That's why I never use hot water for my washing machine. I always use cold water because I'm really, really afraid that I'm going to throw something in the washing machine and it'll come out and be much smaller. And so cold water, usually you don't have that problem. I still remember I had a friend that went to, this is long, long time ago, he went backpacking, it was a Beibao Ke in China. And he spent 3 or 4 months there. And everywhere he went, he bought a t-shirt, okay, with the name or whatever. And when he came back to Taichung, the first night back, his clothes were all, because he had been backpacking for many months, his clothes were quite dirty. And so he threw them all in the washing machine in his parents' home. And we were talking, and I don't know why, but I don't know if he was, but when his clothes came out of the washing machine, they were all shrunk. All his t-shirts and everything, I think, because the other thing is if you put your clothes in a dryer, you know what a dryer is? Sometimes they will shrink too. That's why I hang my clothes, I don't dry them. So yeah, I'm always afraid of that. Okay, so let's look at look at the article. It says, Taiwan remains the only country in Asia with an open civic space for the 5th consecutive year, the Civicus Monitor said in a report released yesterday. Now, what is consecutive? We've talked about this word many times, I think. Yeah, it means kind of like in a row, right? So if you can say he took first place in the competition for 5 consecutive years, it means for 5 years in a row, he was first place. Now, if he was 2 years and then there's a break, and then another 2 years and there's a break, that's not consecutive. It has to be one after the next. So if you can say, well, how long have you lived in, you ask a Waigo and you say, how long have you lived in Taiwan? You say, I've lived here for 10 years. And then maybe you say, well, are those 10 consecutive years? And he says, yeah, they were all, I didn't leave. I was here for all 10 years. Or if it's not consecutive, we say non-consecutive. You add N-O-N to the front. Non-consecutive would be not consecutive, okay? So why don't we say it word together, consecutive. Consecutive. Non-consecutive. Non-consecutive. Okay, so let's read this together. Taiwan remains the only country in Asia with an open civic space for the 5th consecutive year. The Civicus Monitor said in a report released yesterday. Okay. It says here, the People Power Under Attack 2023 report named Taiwan as one of only 37 open countries or territories out of 198 globally, and the only one in Asia. Okay, so they have this report, and the name of the report is kind of interesting. It's People Power Under Attack, which means the power of the people is under attack. It means it's being threatened, right? So that's the name of the report, and then it says that Taiwan's one of only 37 countries or territories. Of course, not every area they rank would be a country. For example, probably these reports will take a place like Hong Kong, maybe, and rank it separately, and they would call that, of course, Hong Kong's not a country, it would be a territory. and there may be other places like that. Okay, so let's read this. The People Power Under Attack 2023 report. Named Taiwan as one of only 37 open countries or territories out of 198 globally. And the only one in Asia. Okay, and it says here, compiled by Civicus, a global alliance of civil society organizations dedicated to bolstering civil action. The ranking, compiled annually since 2017, measures the state of freedom of association, peaceful assembly, and expression around the world. Okay, so first of all, there's several words. What does compile mean? The first word. Yeah, if you bring a bunch of information and data and you put it together, right? Basically, you have to go out and get it, and then you have to put it together. I'll give you an example. Right now, Taichung Amqian, 美国上会, we're working on our second, what we call white paper, 白皮书, right? And to do a 白皮书, you have to go out and survey and ask many questions and talk to people. And then you take all that information, that feedback, those results, and you compile that into a report. And you bring all that information back and you have to, put it together. And it's a lot of mafan, of course. But we compile many things, right? You can say, it could be much simpler, right? You could say, I'm compiling a list of Middle Eastern restaurants in Taichung. Actually, I'm doing this. I had a Taiwanese friend said, where can I get zhongzhong can in Taichung? And I'm like, So I had to think about that, and I compiled a short list of Middle Eastern food or restaurants in Taichung, which is only about 4 or 5 places. I think I told you there's 2 Egyptian-owned restaurants in Taichung, which I was quite surprised to find out about. So anyhow, I compiled that list. So why don't we say together, compile. Compile. Now, if you compile a bunch of stuff, what is the means? You know the verb? The noun for this? Well, no, but what's the word? After you compile things, we call that based on the same word. Yeah, compilation. Okay? So this word compilation is like, you can use this for many different things. It could be even like, I'll use a word that some of you may remember from your earlier years. I certainly was a big thing for me. Back in the days when we had cassette tape, we still do have cassette tapes. You know what a cassette tape is, right? And one of the big things, and people still talk about this in America a lot because it's people have a great, nice, nostalgic feeling for it. But we used to always make something we called a mixtape. Does anyone know what that is? A mixtape is where, you can record on a cassette tape, right? So what you do is you go find all your favorite songs and you put them on one tape, right? And then people would listen to that tape, or they would give it to their friends and say, these are my favorite songs. And you would record it on one tape and people could listen to it. I'll tell you right now, I have a lot of mixtapes at home. And I still listen to them sometimes. I still have a cassette player. But yeah, a mixtape would be a compilation. You could say this is a compilation of my favorite songs. Okay, so it's the same idea. It doesn't have to be data. It doesn't have to be information. It could be anything. It could be a mixtape. It could be music. It could be your favorite books. It could be anything. So why don't we say it again? Compilation. Compilation. You all know what a mixtape is, right? I don't know if you all did that, but this is a big thing. People still talk about this as being very, they have a nice feeling about it, a warm feeling about it. Okay, so compiled compilation. Then we have a global alliance. Of course, global means 全球. Alliance is what? It's a group, kind of like a 联盟, like a group of people together, or organizations. But this is an alliance or a cooperation between civil society organizations. So these are a bunch of organizations, like associations, What are they for? Dedicated to bolstering civil action. Okay, what does bolster mean? We've talked about this before. Promoting, but there's probably a slightly better support, yeah, or we could say to strengthen. Okay, I think probably strengthen is the best word, to make stronger, right? So if you want to bolster your support, okay, so I'll give you an example. Right now, of course, every day I turn on the TV and all they're talking about is the Taiwan election, right? And of course, every candidate is trying to bolster their support, right? They want to get more, to make their support stronger, to get more supporters. So we can say he is trying to bolster his support before the election, okay? So it's a good word. It means to increase the strength of something, okay? We could even say to bolster a building, right? A structure that's getting weak and it's going to fall over. You need to bolster it. You need to bolster the wall or the building, or whatever. Okay, so let's say together, bolster. Bolster. Okay, so they're dedicated to strengthening or supporting civil action. And this ranking, this rating, here's that word ranking, is compiled annually every year since 2017 to measure the state of freedom of association. Now, state of doesn't mean like a zhou. It doesn't mean like what is state? If you talk about the state of something, what does that mean? The condition. Yes, very good. So it's a condition of something. You can say he is in a poor state of mind. Okay, or he is in a good state of mind. It means that the way he feels right now, the way his mind is right now, he is in a good condition or not a good condition. Usually, we're not talking about like Sheng Jinping or anything like that. We're just talking about how you feel. So you can say, I'm in a positive state of mind. Or you could say, what is the state of this company right now? What condition is it in? Or the state of your health. Okay, so the condition of something is the state of. So here it measures the state of freedom of association. Now, freedom of association means you are free to associate or gather or do whatever you want, right? There's no barrier, there's no rules, there's no laws against this association. Peaceful assembly. Assembly here comes from the verb to do what? To meet, to assemble. Okay? Now assemble, A-S-S-E-M-B-L-E, means to gather together. Today you are all assembled in this room to study English together, right? So we are assembling means we are gathering, okay? So assemble, gathering, assembly are all very similar words, to come together, okay? So let's say together, assembly. Assembly. This word got used a lot when I was in high school because every week, and I'm sure it was the same for you, the school would have several assemblies, or maybe even every day. All the students come together, they sit in maybe in the auditorium, and they listen to the xiaozhang, or somebody give a speech. So we say we're having a school assembly. That means all the students need to come down and sit together and listen to something, watch something. Okay, and expression. So peaceful assembly and expression. So peacefully expressing yourself. Now, of course, not all expression is peaceful. Sometimes people express themselves violently or with force. But here we're talking about peaceful expression around the world. Okay? Any questions about this? All the words taken. Okay, so let's read this together. Compiled by Civicus, a global alliance of civil society organizations Let's say that last part again. Civil society organizations dedicated to bolstering civil action Let's say it again. Bolstering civil action. The ranking compiled annually since 2017 measures the state of freedom of association. Peaceful assembly and expression around the world. Okay, let's see. Okay, so next paragraph says, researchers assign each country or territory one of 5 rankings describing the state of its civic space as open, narrowed, obstructed, repressed, or closed. Okay, let's read this too. This year, 37 were considered open, 43 were narrowed, 40 were obstructed, 50 were oppressed, and 28 were closed. Okay, so here we have one of five, a ranking. A ranking means like a position or a title. Okay, so each country that they look at, they give it a ranking. Okay, a ranking doesn't have to be a number. It could be a state or a condition. Okay, so here the rankings are based on the condition of their state of its civic state. And that can be described. The rankings are open, of course, 开放. Narrowed. Narrowed. What does narrowed mean? Narrow means 很窄, right? It means it's narrowed. Obstructed. What does obstructed mean? What would be another word for obstructed? Very simple word. If you obstruct someone, you what? Block. Yes, you block it. So we could say blocked. Okay, it's obstructed. It's blocked. Many things can be obstructed. If you stand in the door over there, you're going to obstruct the door. People can't go in or out. You could say sometimes when people get sick or they get injured, something gets obstructed. Maybe they can't breathe properly because their throat is obstructed or something's obstructed. So anyhow, and then repressed. What does that mean? It's very similar. There's another word that sounds very similar to this. Same idea. Repressed or actually, that's a third word. I didn't even think about that one. There's yet another word. Okay, so we have oppressed. But there's another word. It starts with an S. What? Not quite. It sounds like this word. Suppressed. Yeah. Okay. So we've looked at these words before, but let's review them. To repress means to put down. To put down. Like if we use this word a lot for governments. If a government is repressive, so that means repressive, then that becomes a 形容词. A repressive government means a government that does not allow freedom. It pushes down freedom. It represses freedom. So when you repress something, it means you push it down. You don't allow it to be open. Okay? To oppress, of course, means to very similar idea, but oppressive means it feels something. It's a feeling of being like you're. How do I put it? It means like you feel like something is closing down on you. It feels like. I'll give you an example. Sometimes you walk into a place and the place just feels dark and frightening, and it feels like everything is pushing on you. We call that an oppressive environment. Okay. Now, a country could be an oppressive place. If you go to a country and you feel like people are watching you and it's not friendly and there's a lot of rules and restrictions, you feel like you're being pushed, right? You're being pressed, kind of like the idea of being pressed. You're given this yadi, we say that is very oppressive, or I feel oppressed. So oppressed means to be pushed in from all sides. You have this feeling or this situation. Now, of course, suppressed means to also push down. But we use suppress often for ourselves personally. For example, you can say he suppressed his laughter. Okay, so remember, what if you see someone and they trip and they fall, and you think it's kind of funny, right? Because the way they fell, and you want to laugh, but you think, oh, it will make them feel bad, or you feel 不好意思, you don't want to laugh at them. So you say, I suppressed my laughter. Okay, means instead of laughing, I kind of pushed it down. Okay, or you can say he suppressed his real feelings, or he suppressed, instead of saying or expressing himself, he suppressed it. He didn't say it. Okay, so suppress can be used for yourself. I guess you could say repress my own feelings, but these words are all very similar. But they have, often they're used in slightly different ways. Oppress and repress often used for governments and countries. Suppress is probably used more for our personal selves. We suppress ourselves, or we can suppress feelings and emotions. We push them down. We don't allow them to come out. So yeah. Anyhow, any questions on that? Yeah. I would say China's China's over there. Definitely over there. Singapore, I would say maybe here, obstructed. I know even my Singaporean friends tell me this. You can't just, when they come to Taiwan and they see the elections. In Singapore, they have elections, right? But it's not completely open. You can't, for example, you can't just openly criticize the government or the leader. You might get into trouble. So yeah, it's probably obstructed. Probably. Japan is probably this one. I mean, obviously, Japan is not open. I mean, obviously, it didn't get an open ranking. Taiwan was the only one in Asia. But maybe Japan is a fairly open society, but maybe there's, for some reason, it's narrow. Maybe, yeah, I don't know why, but perhaps it got a narrow. I doubt it got this. I don't think it's obstructed, but I would say it's probably narrow. So if you look at most other Asian countries, Korea, for example, South Korea, it must be this. I can't see why South Korea would be obstructed. North Korea, definitely closed. Okay, so yeah, so these are all interesting rankings. But why don't we say these words together? To repress. To repress. And then as a so repressed. Repressed. To oppress. To oppress. Oppressed. Oppressed. To suppress. To suppress. And then suppressed. Okay, one more time though. Let's say this with means. Okay, repression. Repression. Oppression. Oppression. Suppression. Suppression. Yeah. Again, these words are very similar to each other, and so they often are kind of interchangeable. But they have this idea. I think the big clue here is this word press, right? Because press means to, to push down. Okay. So, yeah, so we have narrowed, open, narrowed, obstructed, repressed, or, of course, closed. Okay? So it's kind of interesting, this language. Let's go ahead and read this. Researchers assign each country or territory, one of 5 rankings describing the state of its civic space. As open, narrowed, obstructed, repressed, or closed. This year, 37 were considered open. Let's say it again, were considered open. 43 were narrowed. 40 were obstructed. Obstructed. 50 were repressed. And 28 were closed. Okay. So it says here, by population, only 2.1% of people live in open societies, half the percentage reported 6 years ago, while 40.3% are in repressed societies and 30.6% are in closed societies. Okay, so when we measure it, not by the country, but by the population, the overall population, which means, what is population? Renko, right? So we say the population of Taichung is like 2.8 million or something like that. Okay, so only 2.1% live in these societies, open societies, which is very small. Okay, so let's read this. By population, only 2.1% of people live in open societies. Half the percentage reported 6 years ago, while 40.3% are in repressed societies and 30.6% are in closed societies. Okay, so again, what this means is that 6 years ago, I don't know if that's the last time they did this survey, but no, it's an annual survey. So anyhow, 6 years ago, it was about 4.2% that were in open society. So it's actually shrunk. It's gone down. Okay, Okay, so here are some rankings. It says 8 of the 26 countries or territories in Asia were rated as closed, up from 7 last year, as Bangladesh joined China, Hong Kong, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Afghanistan in the bottom ranking. Okay, this one actually surprises me. You know where Bangladesh is, right? Yeah. If you know your history, this place used to be called what? Yeah, East Pakistan. That's something I think most people don't remember, but this used to be part of Pakistan. It was called East Pakistan. But yeah, so why don't we say together Bangladesh? Bangladesh. One of my good friends, his wife is from Bangladesh. But yeah, so anyhow, they were rated as close. So when it says up from 7 last year, it means that now it's 8. So it's up from 7. It was 7, now it's 8. Okay, so it joined China, Hong Kong. It's interesting because Hong Kong used to be ranked as a very open place, but now it's not, and for obvious reasons. I mean, I was reading the newspaper last week, and the former president or CEO of Apple Daily, remember the newspaper, Jimmy Lai? You know, he could be in prison for the rest of his life just for protesting, just for doing a Kangyi, you know? That's crazy. I mean, that's insane. Yeah. What's his name in Chinese? Is it Lai? I thought it was, Cantonese. Okay. So yeah. Anyhow, yeah, it's insane that a guy that runs a newspaper, used to be one of the richest, most successful men in Hong Kong, could spend the rest of his life in jail. He didn't kill somebody. He just protested, right? Ridiculous. Okay, so North Korea, of course, no surprise. Vietnam, another. Now, this country I've been to, technically, everyone, including most Americans, we say Laos, but actually the way I've been taught when I went there, the way to pronounce this is actually Lao. The way the Vietnamese, not the Vietnamese, the way the Laotian people say this Lao, they don't say Laos. But anyhow, so it's. Oh, really? Oh, I still said the alcohol. Is it? Okay. The alcohol, okay. Yeah. And Myanmar, you know where Myanmar is, right? Myanmar. What do we used to call Myanmar? Burma, yeah. Yeah. In fact, from what I've seen, when it comes to a Shinongsi, when you describe the people of Myanmar, they still use, I noticed that they still use this word Burmese, because this used to be part of Burma. Yeah. Yeah, so they still use, because I know this word is very awkward. You can't say Myanmarese, or it just sounds weird. But yeah, so they still use the word, Burmese. Okay, and Afghanistan, of course, you know. The name? To what? Burma? Really? I didn't hear that. That's very interesting. Yeah. They spelled it different, right? I think it's Turkiye or something like that. Yeah, Turkey. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I appreciate everyone has the right to decide, but I hate it when countries change their names or cities change their names. You know, I know that some of these names go back to the colonial times. You know, like when it was a Zuni. Like India. You know, they changed a lot of their city names years ago. It went from Calcutta. It changed to Kolkata, and used to be called what's the other big city there? Mumbai used to be Bombay, right? Anyhow, it gets confusing for everybody. Yeah, I saw that. Even India, which I think would be insane. Like nobody's gonna. I don't know. If you ask me, India is India, right? You know, don't change the name of India. It'd be like changing the name of China. You know. So yeah. Okay. So anyhow, hopefully it doesn't. I hope it doesn't happen. Okay. So let's read this together. 8 of the 26 countries or territories in Asia were rated as closed, up from 7 last year. As Bangladesh joined China, Hong Kong, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Afghanistan in the bottom ranking. Okay, so I want to notice something. I almost said ranked, but rated can also be similar. You could say you rate something, but I will say ranking is more about a position, and rating is more about a condition. Okay, I'll give you an example. We talk about movie ratings, right? When you go to a movie, it might be rated. I don't know what they use in Taiwan. They use a different system, but in America we say rated G. You know, G means general audience. Anyone can see it. Children, anyone can see it. Then we have PG. PG is parental guidance suggested. Means parents might provide some guidance when their children go. PG-13 means under 13 years old, your parents should go with you. And then there's R, which means restricted. If you're under 18, you have to go with your parents. And then, of course, there's X, right? But yeah, so there's these different ratings. It tells you what kind of movie it is. But ranking is more about your position on a scale, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or these conditions. So they're similar, but of course here we can use the word rating because we're using this word closed or open or whatever. So it's more of a type, not a position. Okay? Does everybody understand that? Okay. So similar but slightly different. Okay. So it says here, citing Reporters Without Borders data, Civicus said that Taiwan ranked 35th globally for press freedom, and the government generally respects those freedoms. Okay, so press freedom would be your teacher, your reporters, your newspapers, your TV. So it's 35th for press freedom, and the government generally, when we say generally, it means mostly, okay, not always, but generally respects the freedom of the media. And Reporters Without Borders is a very famous organization. It's a NGO or nonprofit organization, and they promote freedom for reporters, for teacher, and so we call Reporters Without Borders. Borders means what? Yeah, well, it means the line between your territory, right? So if something is borderless or without borders, it means it crosses all territories. There's no line between them. Okay? So let's read this. Citing, of course, citing means to refer to something. You cite some information, you cite some data, you refer to that data. Okay, so citing Reporters Without Borders data, Civicus said that Taiwan ranked 35th globally for press freedom, and the government generally respects those freedoms. Respects those freedoms. Okay. Here it says, Taiwan has a rich media environment, and the government respects and upholds its people's liberties and rights of assembly, allowing the public to protest without undue limitations, the report said. Okay, so when we say rich media environment, does it mean they have a lot of money? What does it mean? What does rich mean here? Rich means it's a very, what's a good word for this? Abundant, that's a good word. Diverse, I guess we could say right? Here, of course, rich is not talking about money, okay? So, for example, if you say this restaurant has a rich variety of food, it means abundant, like you said, abundant. It means there's a lot of options, there's a lot of choices, it's very diverse, it's very varied, So it's not talking about the value of something, it means that there's lots of it. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so rich media environment, environment, and the government respects and upholds. So if you uphold something, it means you support something. We always talk about like our 权利. We need to uphold our rights, okay, to support our rights. Okay, so if people's liberties, okay, liberty of course is trio, and rights of assembly. Now, right means the right to assemble, the right to come together. It doesn't restrict your right to gather. Okay, if you want to have a nice party or a meeting out there, or you want to do a protest, you can do it. Okay, allowing the public to protest without undue limitation. Now, limitation would be a 限制, right? A limit, right? Limitation. Undue means improper. Yeah. So of course, does Taiwan have unlimited rights to protest? Of course not. If you wanted to go out and run down the road and block the road and not letting traffic go through, or you wanted to run into a building and occupy the building, the government's going to probably say no. You can't just do whatever you want. There are limitations to protest anywhere. I don't know if you've been watching the news recently, not in Taiwan, but from around the world. There's all these protesters that block highways and roads. It's for they want to stop oil, right? They want to stop the use of oil. Have you seen this? It's very big news now all over the world, especially in Western countries. These people will come and sit in the middle of the Kaohsiung, or they'll sit in the middle of the downtown London or New York, and they'll just sit on the road and block all the traffic, and they won't move because they say they're protesting against oil, 石油, okay? But they've been going even further. They go into museums and like the Louvre in Paris, and they throw black paint or paint on the paintings to protest this oil, which I think is ridiculous. No one's going to support that. But anyhow, this would be, of course, wrong by most people. They say you can't just block the road. You can't put paintings. You can't splash paint on oil on a painting. So anyhow, there are without undue limitations. So it means the public is able to protest without unreasonable, what was the word? Someone said an improper limitation or restriction. Okay? So yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. Taiwan has a rich media environment. And the government respects and upholds its people's liberties, and rights of assembly, allowing the public to protest without undue limitations. Say it again, undue limitations, the report said. Okay. I saw there's a lot of funny videos about the Stop Oil protests. One guy was yelling at them because he said, you're wearing oil, right? And it's true, right? If you wear artificial material like polyester, synthetic, it's made of oil, right? It comes from petroleum. So they're like, that's hypocritical. You're wearing oil-based clothing, right? So I don't know. It's kind of crazy. There's been many strategies by people who are driving to get around these guys. When they see these on the middle of the road. One I saw was quite interesting. Instead of trying to go through the car, he was a BMW driver. he reversed this car. And so the exhaust, the Pai Chi line was facing the protesters, and then he just started blasting them, and then, of course, so it's kind of crazy. I'm not against environmental protection and protecting our environment, but I do think there's a right way to protest and a wrong way to protest. Okay, so here it says, in contrast, Bangladesh, I guess that's the way to say it, Bangladesh launched a sweeping and violent crackdown on opposition parties ahead of general elections, arresting nearly 10,000 activists, and has been downgraded to the lowest rank. So they weren't the lowest before, but they were downgraded. So, okay, if you're let's say you're a restaurant and you have a very high ranking, but then maybe your service goes down, your food quality goes down, and then you say, well, your rating or your ranking is downgraded. Now, you could be upgraded too, right? Now we can use these words upgrade and downgrade for many different things. Like some of my best experiences flying on airplanes is when I get to the check-in counter and the check-in person says, "Sir, you've been upgraded to business class." And I'm like, "Really? Oh, great!" That's happened to me, I think 4 or 5 times. I've heard the key is that, you can't ask for it, right? Usually, you could ask for it, but it probably won't happen. But I hear that if you're traveling by yourself, and if you don't look too bad, like your dress, your clothing is okay, the agent, often they have, maybe in the economy class, they're full, right? So they're looking for people they can upgrade to the business class because there's going to be more seats there. So there's been a few times. The first time this ever happened to me, and I was not dressed well, I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I was coming from Hong Kong. This is in university. I was coming from Hong Kong to Taipei with my friend, and we were in the Hong Kong airport, and we were flying Cathay Pacific, Guotai, right? Hong Kong Guotai. And the agent said, "We're upgrading both of you to first class." And I was like, "What? First class?" and it was a 747, so we got to sit upstairs in the first class, and I felt very a little bit awkward because my friend and I were wearing t-shirts and shorts, and everybody else was like looking really nice, another time I was flying from Manila to Hawaii, and it was a mess. The airport there was a strike, Bagong, and people were angry. And I don't know, maybe because I stayed very calm. Everyone else was shouting at the airline, and they were very upset. And I was very calm, and I got to the counter, and the man said, "We're going to upgrade you to first class for the flight to Hawaii." So I was like, "Okay, great." So be polite to your agent. Maybe they'll upgrade you, yeah. So, yeah. So anyhow, here they were downgraded. Bangladesh launched a sweeping. Sweeping means very what? Very broad, very wide. Widespread. Yeah, that would be a good word. Widespread. In fact, that's a very good word. If you say a sweeping change, a widespread change, that's one word, of course. Of course, we could simply say broad. Okay. So why don't we say it together? Sweeping. Widespread. Broad. Okay, crackdown, I know we've talked about that many times. Opposition party, of course, means a party that's not in power. Like in Taiwan right now, that would be the KMT or the TPP. Ahead of general elections, this would be like open general election, probably for president, arresting nearly 10,000 activists. Now, you know what an activist is, right? Someone who's protesting or fighting for some change. You could be like those guys that were saying the stop oil people. We could say they're stop anti-oil or anti-environmental activists. They're fighting for environmental protection to stop oil. Okay, so we call them activists. We could say protester, but activist is probably a broader word. Let's say together, activist. Okay, and so Bangladesh has been downgraded to the lowest rank. Okay, so let's read this. In contrast, Bangladesh launched a sweeping and violent crackdown on opposition parties ahead of general elections, arresting nearly 10,000 activists, and has been downgraded to the lowest rank. Okay. It says here, Sri Lanka has also been downgraded to repressed after it continued to crack down on dissidents and activists. Now, a dissident, I think we've talked about this before. What is a dissident? It's kind of like somebody who is against the government, basically. We often say political dissident. It means someone who's fighting against their government system, usually. So, if you're a dissident, usually you hear about this in like a communist country. You say political dissident, somebody who is fighting against the system or the government, and they're trying to change the government. We call that a dissident. Okay, activists could be for anything. Could be for human rights, animal rights, environmental protection. A dissident is usually someone who's against the government or the government system, the political system. Okay. So that's Sri Lanka. You know where that is, right? In Chinese, it's Sri Lanka or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Let's read this thing. Sri Lanka has also been downgraded to repressed after it continued to crack down on dissidents and activists. Okay. So Joseph Benedict, a civicus researcher covering the Asia-Pacific region, said that with the civic space in the region continuing to shrink, Taiwan maintaining an open civic space is positive, as it shows that human rights and civic space development in the region are not all bad, and that some nations are still serious about their international responsibilities. Okay, so I think you can tell from this that when we say civic space, we're not talking about a place like Shuming Guangchang. What we're talking about is we're saying the space to express yourself, to protest, in public, basically. A civic space for discussion, we say a space to talk about things, to share ideas, or to discuss something, or to disagree, or to protest. That's what we're referring to as our civic space. It's not actually like a place. Okay? So let's read this together. Joseph Benedict, a civicus researcher covering the Asia-Pacific region, said that with civic space in the region continuing to shrink, Taiwan maintaining an open civic space is positive, as it shows that human rights and civic space development in the region are not all bad, and that some nations are still serious about their international responsibilities. Let's say the last part again. International responsibilities. Okay. Let's read a couple more paragraphs. It says, Taiwan has become a haven for journalists and dissidents from other nations, allowing them to continue their work safely, he added. Countries that want to develop their civic spaces should look to Taiwan to learn from it. Okay, what is haven? I don't think we've ever looked at this word before. What is a haven? What's another word for haven? Sanctuary, what else? Shelter, okay. Some of these words we've talked about before. Sanctuary, shelter. But yeah, a haven would be a place where you can have shelter, where you can be protected. Okay? So why don't we say together? Sanctuary. Okay, remember it has a CH. Sanctuary. Shelter. Haven. Okay, so it's a haven for journalists and dissidents from other nations. It is very interesting. One thing I think is kind of cool, actually, is since Hong Kong started to crack down on journalists in China as well, Taiwan now has all these famous newspapers and media outlets are based in Taiwan, like New York Times, right? Or CNN, they have full-time people based in Taipei, which you never saw before. They were all in Beijing or Hong Kong or something else. So now a lot of them are here, which is good for Taiwan. So yeah, it's a haven for them. It's allowing them to continue their work safely. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this. Taiwan has become a haven for journalists. And dissidents from other nations, allowing them to continue their work safely. He added, countries that want to develop their civic spaces should look to Taiwan to learn from it, he said. Okay, I took a word here that's so obvious that I forgot to mention, but you know what a journalist is, right? I used to be a journalist. It means like a teacher or anybody who's working in journalism. Journalism, of course, is a xinhua, right? Like I majored in journalism with an M. That's xinhua, right? So yeah, journalism. Okay. So here it says, however, there's always a however, right? However, Taiwan has room for improvement, Benedict said, adding that the defamation laws under Article 310 of the Criminal Code could be used to oppress freedom of speech. Okay? It says, while there is freedom to form unions in Taiwan, the nation also has strict rules against strikes, he said. Okay, so when we say room for improvement, what does that mean? There's room to get better. There's space to get better. We use this expression all the time for people, right? You can say, oh, you did a great job on this project, but I think there's some room for improvement. You could be better. You could be even better. So this word gets used in many different ways. You can say he is a very hard worker, but there's room for improvement. Maybe his attitude needs to be better or something. We can talk about that for people. We can talk about that for countries. Okay. So Taiwan has room for improvement. He said, adding that defamation laws. Now, does anyone know what defamation is? It comes from a word to defame. Does anyone know what that means? What? Yeah, it means if I defame one of you, it means I unfairly say something about you that makes you. You know what fame is, right? Fame means you're famous, right? If you defame someone, means you reduce their reputation, their standing. So yeah, if I say, oh, he's a liar and a thief, okay, I'm defaming. Well, if it's not true. Now, if he really is a liar and a thief, okay, well then it's not a problem because it proved that he was a liar and a thief. But if I just defame somebody, I say he's a liar and a thief, I'm defaming him if it's not true because I'm lowering his reputation. So we have defamation laws, right? Sometimes we say you can't just do that. You can't just say that you are somebody. But in journalism, and I think I taught you these words long time ago. These are two words that all journalists learn. I'll teach these to you. The first word is libel, and the second word is slander. When I was in university, we had to learn these two words and what they mean and how you define them. So libel and slander are both forms of defamation. They're both ways of defaming somebody. Okay. Does anyone know the difference between these two? Well, but there's this distinction. You were nodding your head. What is the difference? Okay. Yeah, they're both actually about words, but there's a small difference. Libel is written and slander is spoken. Okay? So as a writer, as a journalist, like I used to write for a newspaper, this is where I was at. I needed to be careful. If I wrote a story, an article, Wenjiang about somebody, and I said he stole money from his company, but he didn't really steal money from his company, I could be accused of libel. Now, if I was a TV reporter, like working for TVBS, or and I did something, that would be slander because I'm talking, right? I'm speaking. If you stand up in the middle of the street and you say that guy is a he cheated on his wife, or he stole money from the government, and it's not true, that would be slander because you're speaking. But if you write it, you put it in the newspaper, or you do a sign or something, and it's libel. So it's the same idea, but it's just how you do it. And both are forms of defamation, basically. Now again, this is why, and I told you this before, this is why in the newspaper you see often this word, alleged, okay? He allegedly killed his wife. He allegedly stole money from his company. What does that mean? It means he's accused of that, but it doesn't mean he actually did it, okay? Now, of course, if this goes to the, across the street we have the 法院, the court. If it goes to the court and the judge says, yes, he stole money, or yes, he killed his wife, then we don't have to use the word alleged. He's been found guilty in a court of law, and then we can say, yes, he killed his wife, or he stole money. Okay? So we use the word, that's why journalists use this word alleged a lot, because that way I'm not saying he did it, I'm saying he's been accused of that. Okay? So yeah, so this is all, journalists, but it's good to know. Okay, so once again, let's look at this. Let's say it together. Defamation. Defamation. To defame. To defame. Libel. Libel. Slander. Slander. Yeah. This word slander is more common because when people say things about people, you can say he slandered me. Now, of course, if we want to use this as a 形容词, we just add OUS, right? Libelous speech, slanderous speech. Okay, so yeah, you can say that was very slanderous language that he used. Okay, so anyhow, does everybody understand that, or do you have any questions? Yeah. It's not easy to what? You mean to be guilty of that law? Right. Ministry? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. That's it. Yeah. Actual math. Yeah. So you used a very good word. I don't think we've used this word before. It's a good word to know, actually. Malice. Malice means, and from this word we get another word that you see. It's a 形容词. Malicious. What does malicious mean, or malice? What does that mean? If you act with malice towards somebody, or you act in a malicious way, or you say something maliciously, what does that mean? What's your goal? Your goal or your intention is to do what? To harm them, to hurt them. Okay? So I'll give you an example. If I accidentally bump into you, or I accidentally do something, but I didn't mean to do it, right? It was unintentional. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Okay, but if I attack you, I'm acting with malice because I'm trying to harm you. I'm trying to hurt you, so it's intentional. So what you were just saying is that, if you say something about somebody, you make a statement about somebody, and it's obvious that you were trying to intentionally hurt them, the purpose was to harm somebody's reputation, well then, yes, that's with malice. But if you just make a statement about something, and your goal is not to attack them or harm them, and they can prove that, they can show that, then like you said, this law does not apply. It's not. Yeah. So yeah, these things, because people are always afraid. Almost every free country has a libel law or a slander law, right? I can't just go out there and say things about people. But of course, the question is, does that impact freedom of speech, right? Because if I'm a teacher and I say, well, this guy did something wrong, or he's accused, and then he comes and sues me for slander or libel, then can I write anything freely? But the question is, how is the law enforced? So most free countries like Taiwan and the United States, they have conditions, conditions to say, yes, you can say things, and no, you can't say other things, and you have to look at the condition like malice. There's a malice involved. Okay? So yeah, these are good words. Why don't we say those words together? Malice. Malice. Malicious. Malicious. Right, if you say someone's a very malicious person, it means they're trying to hurt other people. Okay? So these are good words. Let's read this together then. However, Taiwan has room for improvement. Benedict said, adding that the defamation laws under Article 310 of the Criminal Code could be used to oppress freedom of speech. Okay, I just want to add, here's that word, oppress, right? Okay, yeah. While there is freedom to form unions in Taiwan, the nation also has strict rules against strikes. Let's say again, strict rules against strikes. He said. Sorry, I can't move the screen up further. But yeah, so what is a union? I forgot to mention, what is a union? Like a labor union. What we call that, a 工会, right? Okay, 工会, yeah. So, right, strike is 罢工, right? Yeah. So, yeah. So anyhow, that would be a restriction on freedom. Although some people say, again, when can you strike and when can you not strike? Interesting question. Just like the airline, whenever there's a strike, it seems that big strikes are transportation, right? Like the airlines or the trains or whatever, and that, of course, that affects everybody. In America, the one thing we often see, I don't know, in Taiwan, do teachers have a union? Is there a teachers union? Because in America, teachers unions always threaten strikes. They say, we're going to bakong, and then, they want higher pay. And I was just having a conversation with one of my good friends from high school. He grew up in Taiwan, like me. His father was a 教授 at 东海大学. And he just, in about 4 months ago, he moved to Georgia, the state of Georgia, in the U.S., to take up a new position as a professor. And the very interesting thing is his area of expertise. He's teaching. He was invited to Georgia to teach. You know what his field is? Teach Taiwanese cinema, Taiwanese movies, and that's his field. So, and he's very good at it. He knows a lot about it. But when he came back, he was back. I saw him a few days ago. I said, "How's everything going there?" And he said, "Oh, it's I really enjoy living in Georgia. It's a beautiful city and all that where I live. Not Atlanta, another city." But he said, "Wow." He says, "I tell you, even though my salary in America is much, much higher than I made in Taiwan," he says, I can barely pay for everything. He said his salary in the U.S. was 3 times higher than what he makes in Taiwan. But he said in Taiwan he could save more money. He had plenty of money to spend. Because in America he barely has any money to spend. Because everything's more expensive, right? Your food, you have to pay for insurance. Your rent is much higher. All those things are much higher. So whenever Americans, they want to come to Taiwan, they look at the salary and they're like, "Oh, this is too low." And I'm like, "Don't worry." So yeah, so whenever you look at salaries, when you 比较 salaries, you have to look at the other costs too, right? Like I'll give you just ordinary house in many cities. America, depends what city you're living, but maybe average, you might pay $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month U.S. for rent, right? $2,000, that's what, how much? 6万块 per month for rent. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying everywhere, but I'm saying, and that would be, and if you went to somewhere like New York City or San Francisco, you easily pay 50% or twice that amount. You might be paying $3,000, $4,000 a month for rent. So yeah, even though I know Taiwan, by many standards, the salaries are quite low, the cost of living is cheaper here than many other countries, especially the United States. So yeah. Okay, any questions about this article? Okay, let's go on to a different one then. Let's see here. I saw one. I'll be very honest with you. I intentionally, in case you're wondering, I generally avoid articles about Taiwan elections because I'm afraid it's going to create a big debate. I know it's very, very sensitive, and everyone has their own opinions, right? I'll teach you an expression that we use in America. We say, I don't want to. Let me write this. This is a great expression. Okay. Okay. I don't want to open a can of worms. This is a very common expression. What this means, you know what a can, right? A whatever. Worms. You know what worms are like. Yeah. So if I say I don't want to open a can of worms, it means I don't want to touch that because it's going to create a lot of trouble or a lot of arguments or a lot of problems. So if someone says, why don't you talk to him about this situation? You're like, no, I don't want to talk to him about that because that's going to open a can of worms. Or you say, well, why don't let's have a discussion of this. And he's like, no, I refuse to open that can of worms. So when we say a can of worms, it means it's something that's going to cause a lot of problems and controversy and arguments and disagreements. So this is a very common expression, like to open a can of worms. Yeah, stir up a cesspool, or sometimes we say to stir the pot. So, sometimes we're having a discussion about something and then someone says, well, what about this? And they say something very controversial. And then everyone gets really excited or upset. We say that's to stir the pot. Okay? You say something that creates a lot of strong emotion or response or reaction. It's to stir the pot. So, yeah. You said to stir the cesspool. Does everybody know what a cesspool is? Not a good thing. A cesspool is where in a building, all the 大便 basically goes down into this big pool, right? And then so I'll tell you something. I live in a building, and my car is parked on the B4 level, the very bottom level. And once every 6 months or 1 year, this big truck comes down. And they open up the thing and they stick the hose down there and they pull it all out. And I'll tell you, the whole basement smells terrible. Whenever I have to get to my car, my motorcycle, I'm pulling my nose and running to get away from that. But yeah, so why don't we say we got a cesspool? Cesspool. Okay, to open a can of worms. To open a can of worms. To stir the pot. To stir the pot. Okay, so anyhow, here it says, this article, we have one thing that's happened in Taiwan is we have foreign VIPs coming to Taiwan, it seems like every week, maybe a couple times a week. So here we have a Czech senator. Okay, now in America we use the word senator for the not the higher, but the second house of the Congress, and the other house is the House of Representatives. So here they use the word senator. It's one of their 民意代表, or their a little bit like Taiwan's 立委. Okay, so it says here, reliance on China risky. Czech senator. Lessons. Democratic countries should increase their collaboration worldwide to fight against the communist threat. Czech Senator Pavel Fischer said. Okay, now Pavel is a very popular name in the Czech Republic for some reason. I've heard of many people from Czech Republic have the name Pavel. I don't know if it's the same name as Peter. It might be something like that. Sometimes you have these names that are very common, like Peter or John or James, and that might be Peter. I'm not sure. Maybe. Okay, so what is collaboration, this word over here? It's another word for cooperation. You can say to collaborate with the R-A-T-E, okay, just like to cooperate. So why don't we say it together? To collaborate. To collaborate. Collaboration. Collaboration. Okay, so, and you know what risk is? Risk is, so risk is what? 风险, yeah. So if something is risky, it's dangerous. There's risk involved. So why don't we say together, risk. Risky. Okay, and reliance, of course, means to rely, to count on something. Okay, so it says here, over-reliance on a state harboring ill will against Taiwan would inevitably hurt the freedom and democracy in the nation, along with its sovereignty, Czech Senator Pavel Fischer said when he met with Legislative Speaker Yoshi Kun at the Legislative Yuan in Taipei yesterday. So what does overt mean? Good word. And there's two words. There's the opposite. So overt, and I'll write the other word for you. Covert. Yeah, so covert means secret. So if covert means secret, what does overt mean? Open. Yeah. So open, if something is open, you can see it. You can say, he overtly opposed me. It means he openly opposed me. He's openly against me. But if he covertly opposed me, it means he secretly went against me. He didn't say it openly. Because sometimes people say, oh yeah, I support you, it's great. But covertly, they're doing something. So when we talk about covert operations, often we talk about spies. You know, if a country sends a spy to another country, or they're secretly gathering information, we say covert operation or covert, anything. It means in secret. But overt means openly. Everyone can see it. So open, we could say open. If you want to just change that word, we can just say open instead of covert. Okay? So these are good words because we use them in different ways. You can say he overtly communicated his unhappiness to me. It means he openly communicated, told me about his unhappiness. Okay, so why don't we say together overt? Let's say mispronounced overt. Overt. And then covert. Covert. Yeah, it's funny, we say overt, but we do not say overt, we say covert. Okay, so the accent is different. One more time, overt. Covert. Okay, so overt reliance on a state, means on a country, harboring ill will. Now this is a very, very common expression, ill will. What does ill will mean? Yeah, it means bad intentions towards somebody. In fact, you could simply say that, bad intentions. Now, good intentions, we talked about too, right? You can have good intentions or bad intentions. But intention, of course, is to intend. What do you want to do? What's your goal? What's your purpose? Okay? To intend. I intend to help him, or I intend to harm him, right? So if you intend to harm somebody, then you have bad intention. Usually you have an S to the end of it. Intentions, but Yeah, we say this expression usually is an or we have, if we want to help somebody, we have good intentions towards somebody. So ill will is like, of course, will is like a feeling. So an ill will towards somebody means you don't want to help them. You don't feel, you want to harm them. Ill, of course, means what? Malice? Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, we just learned that word, right? Malice. Malicious, right? Remember that word? We just talked about that. Malicious, or to have malice, would be ill will. Those are actually used in a very similar way. So to have malice towards somebody, to have ill will towards somebody. Ill, of course, can mean kind of two slightly different things. Ill, of course, you can mean I feel ill. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. That means you feel sick, right? But if you have an ill will towards somebody or ill feelings towards somebody, it means you don't like them. You want to harm them. You're trying to harm them. Okay. Let's say this together. Ill will. Ill will. Bad intentions. Bad intentions. Good intentions. Okay. So anyhow, overt reliance on a state harboring ill will. Now, actually, I completely forgot to mention this word. Harboring. Now, I think you all know what the word harbor means, right? Harbor normally means ganko, right? But here, this has nothing to do with a ganko. What does this mean? If you harbor feelings towards somebody, what does that mean? Yeah. It means you hold something in your heart or your feelings. You harbor. Well, I'll give you an example. You can say he secretly harbored a great love for her. Maybe he really loved her, but he didn't express it. So you can say he harbors feelings of love for her. It's almost like this. I guess it doesn't always have to be secret. I mean, he could express it, but often this idea of harboring something means to hold it inside of you, so that you maybe it comes out, maybe it doesn't. But yeah. So if you harbor ill will, means you know that China does have some ill will towards Taiwan or some of its leaders, but it is open there, so it's not secret. But it means to hold something in you or in your heart. Okay, so does everybody understand that? Okay, we can harbor affection, we can harbor love, we can harbor ill feelings, we can harbor malice. Okay, these are things we hold inside of ourselves. Okay, so over-reliance on a state harboring ill will against Taiwan would inevitably hurt the freedom and democracy of the nation. What does inevitable mean? This is a great word. We use unavoidable. It means it will happen. Okay? And so the word for 形容词 is inevitable with an E. And this is a great word. We use this word a lot. Okay? If you say, okay, I'll give you an example. I saw this today. I see this every day. I'm driving down the road to come here, and I see this car, and he's driving in the motorcycle lane, then he's driving inside, he's weaving in and out of the traffic, and he's going very fast. When I look at a driver like that, I always think it's inevitable he's going to have an accident, right? It's not when, it's not if, it's when. It's not if he's going to have an accident, it's when is he going to have an accident. Because if you drive like that in Taiwan for too long, you're going to hit somebody. I don't care how good you are, how good a driver you are. So we say it's inevitable he's going to have an accident because he's driving very dangerously or very carelessly. Okay, so does everybody understand that? You might say if you don't sleep enough every night, if you don't sleep enough every night, it's inevitable you're going to get sick, right? You're definitely going to get sick. So it's definite. It's going to happen. Does everybody understand that? So this is a very good word. We use it a lot. So why don't we say together, inevitable. Inevitable. And then as inevitably. Inevitably. Yeah, it's a hard word to say. So it would inevitably hurt the freedom and democracy in the nation, along with its sovereignty. Of course, every country wants to have sovereignty, needs to have control over your own affairs, so control over your own territory. So obviously, Taiwan and every country tries to protect their sovereignty. Okay, you can say Taiwan has sovereignty over the island of Taiwan plus some islands like Hongbu and June London, those places. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. So let's read this together. Any questions? Okay, let's read it. Overt reliance on a state. Harboring ill will against Taiwan. Let's say it one more time. Harboring ill will against Taiwan would inevitably hurt the freedom and democracy in the nation, along with its sovereignty. Czech Senator Pavel Fischer said when he met with Legislative Speaker Yoshi Kun at the Legislative Yuan in Taipei yesterday. Okay. Taiwan and the Czech Republic share universal values such as freedom, respect for the law, respect for the rule of law, and democracy, Fisher said, adding that the world is in a dangerous situation. Okay, so we talk about often universal values like human rights, right? You know, like the freedom of speech or the freedom of expression, whatever. There's many of these what we call universal values. Universal means everyone has a right to those values. Okay, respect for the rule of law. Of course, we need to respect the law. We can't just do whatever we want. And democracy. Okay. Let's read this then. Taiwan and the Czech Republic. Say it again. Czech Republic share universal values such as freedom, respect for the rule of law, and democracy, Fisher said, adding that the world is in a dangerous situation. Dangerous situation. Okay. It says here, Europe has seen how energy provision has been weaponized following Russia's invasion of Ukraine and how it could threaten many countries' economic foundations, Fisher said. What is a foundation? We've talked about this before. The base, right? So this building has a foundation, probably way down in the basement somewhere, but it's like the base. And the foundation, if it's not strong, of course, the building will collapse. So we could talk about foundations for many things, for a country, for a company, for anything. So it says here, Europe has seen how energy provision, of course, energy provision means energy supply, right, to provide energy, has been weaponized. Now that's a good word. What does weapon mean? Weapon, you know this word, right? Weapon means to achieve. So if you weaponize something, what does that mean? Good word. Exactly. To use something or make it into a weapon. So how do we weaponize energy? How does Russia weaponize energy? What do they do? Exactly. They say, okay, if you are against us, if you don't do what we want, we're going to cut your oil or your gas or whatever. Okay. So we can weaponize many things. We can weaponize trade, right? Maui. China does this very well against countries like Australia, right? Okay, you're doing that. No more. We're not going to buy any more wine from you. No more hudajiu or no more coal. Sorry. And so that's weaponizing trade. We're using trade as a weapon. Okay, so let's say together, weaponize. Weaponize. Okay. Okay, let's read this. Europe has seen how energy provision. It let's say it again, energy provision has been weaponized. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And how it could threaten many countries' economic foundations, Fisher said. Okay, that's a photo caption. It says here, the world must learn these lessons before it is too late, he said. The Czech parliament is working to shore up energy safety, and it was suggested that Prague should take measures to bolster, there's that word again, the nation against a hostile Russia, Fisher said. Okay, so the first sentence I think you know, but here it says it is working to shore up energy safety. What is this word shore? I mean, shore normally means like high on, right? But what does to shore up mean? Yeah, I would say again, this is a very, remember the word bolster is pretty much the same as this, to strengthen. If you shore something up, it means you strengthen it, you make it stronger, okay? So I think of, like, where they have that, like like a dam, right? And maybe the water is going up and it's getting higher, it's raining hard, and the engineers, the Gongchang will try to shore up the dam so that it doesn't collapse. Okay, they try to make it stronger. Okay, so why don't we say together, shore up. Shore up. Okay, so they're trying to shore up their energy safety, and it was suggested Prague, of course, is the capital of the Czech Republic, should take measures to do something to bolster the nation, to strengthen the nation against a hostile Russia. What does hostile mean? Yeah, it means unfriendly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Unfriendly, hostile. If someone is very hostile, they're acting in a hostile way, which means they're not very friendly. It's like maybe they want to harm you, or they're, let's say together, hostile. Hostile. And if we want to turn this into a means, what do we do? Yes, very good. So it's P-I-L-I-T-Y. Hostility. Okay? So let's say together, hostility. Hostility. So you could say, he showed great hostility towards me. Okay? Or there's a lot of hostility between those two people. They don't like each other. Okay? So let's read. Oops. Let's go above. The world must learn these lessons. Let's say it again. The world must learn these lessons before it is too late, he said. The Czech Parliament is working to shore up energy safety. One more time, shore up energy safety. And it was suggested that Prague should take measures to bolster the nation against a hostile Russia, Fisher said. Okay. It says here, national security, yes. That's a good word. It's similar. And we do use it a lot. And you can also use that word by itself, an antagonist. Okay? So let me type right. Okay. Antagonistic means you're hostile towards somebody. You're acting in a way that is unfriendly to somebody. But the reason why I wrote these two other words, these are actually referring to usually people. So where do you see an antagonist and a protagonist? I'll give you a clue. We're in a library, right? So you always see this in a story. Okay? Remember, there's always to put it in very simple terms, there's a good guy and a bad guy, right? The good guy is the hero, Yin Shou, is the protagonist, and the bad guy, or the enemy, or the bad person is the antagonist, the person who's the bad guy in the story. Yeah, so if you want to, whenever, even as a kid, when you read a book, there's usually a good guy and a bad guy in the story. Okay, or a movie, you watch a movie. So we talk about antagonists and protagonists. Now, we don't actually say protagonistic too often. We don't use that word. I mean, we could say it, but we don't say that too often to describe somebody. We would simply say friendly, they're acting in a friendly way, or they're showing goodwill. Remember we said ill will? Or showing goodwill. We don't usually say they're a protagonistic person, but this word we do use a lot. We say he is very antagonistic towards me. He's very, very hostile towards me. Okay? They're very similar words. So why don't we say these two words first of all? Let's say the base word. Antagonist. Antagonist. Protagonist. A-N-T-A. Sorry. No N. It doesn't look right. Antagonist. This is correct, right? Oh, I thought you were talking about this word. Okay, so it's protagonist. Correct? Sorry. It's hard when you look at the board and you're writing stuff. But I don't feel bad because so many times I'm talking to Taiwanese friends about some 中文字 and they're like, how do you write that? And they're like, no, I disagree. Anyhow, we all have the same problem. Okay, sorry about that. One more time. Antagonist. Antagonist. Protagonist. Protagonist. Antagonistic. Antagonistic. And I won't even say that because we don't use that very often. We don't say protagonistic very much. But we do say antagonistic quite often. Okay? Okay. Okay. So it says here, national security is utmost. Utmost means what? The most important. If you say this is absolute priority, it's utmost. It's of utmost importance that you do this now. This has utmost priority. It means it's the most. You can see the word most, right? It's very important. Okay, so why don't we say together, utmost. Utmost. Okay. And over-reliance, I think you know what that means, right? Rely means how, right? So if you over-rely on something, or you have over-reliance, of course this is what it means here, then it means you rely on something too much, right? It's over, you're over-reliant on it, okay? So why don't we say together, over-reliance. Over-reliance. Okay, so on a hostile, there's that word hostile. I guess we could say antagonistic or hostile. Although I will say antagonistic is usually used for people, less for countries. Hostile we can use more for countries. On a hostile state could damage the freedom democracy and sovereignty of a nation, he said. Okay, so let's read this. Let's read this. National security is of utmost importance. Let's say it again. Utmost importance. And over-reliance on, let's say it again, over-reliance on a hostile state could damage the freedom, democracy, and sovereignty of a nation, he said. Okay, so that's all I think we have time for today, but any questions before we end? Okay, well, I think we're meeting again next week, right? Okay, good. Okay, we'll see you next week then. Thank you.